Welcome to the first lecture on Oceanography. In today's class, we will be discussing the topic on ocean topography. The ocean topography forms the very fundamentals for further lectures in oceanography, where we will be talking about temperatures, we will be talking about waves and currents in the oceans. So to start with topography, let's understand the basic meaning of the word topography. Topography is any relief feature that can be found on a landscape. So suppose I am standing into an open garden. Okay? I can see distant view of mountains. I can see a water body nearby. I can see plants growing. So all that forms all those components together form the relief or the landscape of the land. Similarly, you have similar landscapes or similar relief features beneath the ocean surface, and that is what is basically known as ocean topography. So today we would be starting with ocean topography. We would be understanding the various names that we use for the sections of ocean and how we change the concept as we go deeper into the ocean. And finally, we would be talking about various layers in the ocean. And there would be a combination of the various layers and the various parts of ocean topography. So let's start with the first and the foremost level. So as we can see in this image, this is the ocean surface and this is the land here. The first section of the land that recedes into the water, this section is of kind of less deep, okay, and it has a lot of sediments which come from the land or the coast, which slowly and gradually get deposited here. So this whole section here forms the region of sediment wedge or the deposition of sediments. So this section is known as Continental Shelf. As I said, it is less deep. Okay. Since it has sediments coming in from the coast, the depth is less, the steepness is also less. So this region is less steep. Okay. So the average depth we can say is around 100 meters to 130 meters. So you have 100 to 130 meters as the average depth. And usually these continental shelves are very wide. So you have the width of around say 1300 kilometers. These regions have a lot of sediments that are coming in. As a result, I said these are less steep, but these are also rich in minerals, and as a result, they are good mining grounds. So you have lot of minerals and mining activities are found in continental shelf. You have oil drilling platforms in this region, and finally, again, if you go, if in this region also you have fishing grounds. So a lot of fishes are found in this region. Slowly and gradually, the layer of the sediments recede, and that recession is a kind of vertical recession which is much more steep. Since this area is steep, this region is known as continental slope. Okay. This region is highly steep. The average depth, the width is around 20 to 100 kilometers for continental slope. The average depth is around 200 meters, 2000 meters. Okay. Also in this region, you have, as this region comes down, you have a kind of plain area that can be found. We will be moving on to the next slide to understand that. So I am trying to divide the slide for the ocean features into two sections. So this is the first section where you can see this is the continent or the land area. Okay. Then you have the continental shelf. So this region is the continental shelf that we have already discussed. Then the next section here is the continental slope, which is kind of steep and percolating down. Then you have the abyss area or the abyssal area. These are the kind of plains found on the ocean surface, or they are also known as the basin areas. Within this plain area, you will have some kind of volcanic ridges. So you have the volcanic island ridges that are present here on this plain region or the abyssal plain area. Now, this plain area, at the base of the plain area, you have small kind of risings and they are known as continental rise. These are small elevations found on the ocean floor or the ocean basin. They are around 20 to 100 meters in elevation. Okay. Then let's move on to the next slide to understand the further parts. You have the mid-oceanic ridge. So this is a specific characteristic of the Atlantic Ocean. So this diagram specifically denotes the oceanic ridge of Atlantic Ocean here. But within the basin, as we go on to the base, you have a small set of mountains that are coming up, and those series of mountains here are known as ridge. Okay. Then we already talked about the plain area. Within the sea, there would be like a kind of big sea, and there would be small uprisings later on. And those uprisings, which you can see from distance as kind of islands coming up from the sea, are known as seamounts. So you have set of seamounts here. So supposedly this is the ocean surface. It would come up like this. So you can have a distant view from an outside area, saying that this is a kind of seamount which can be seen here. And these seamounts, when they slowly and gradually erode, so the top layer gets washed off, and these fall beneath the sea level, and these are known as gyres. So their upper top region gets eroded away. So yeah, they have a kind of flat base or a flat top, and they finally are falling below the sea level or below the basic ocean level. Now you have a lot of trenches that are found. Trenches are kind of depressions in the ocean surface. So any depression that is found in the ocean surface are known as ocean trench. Trenches are also used when we will be talking about more about the geomorphology topics, features of fluvial erosion and glacial erosion. So these are trenches which are huge depressions beneath the ocean surface, and they are known as ocean trenches. Now these ocean trenches are found in various regions, but the most common trenches that we can see are there are around 26 trenches in the ocean. There are 2 in Pacific, 3 in Atlantic, and remaining all trenches are mainly found in Indian Ocean. Now, let us talk about some important highlights of each of this. So, as I said, there are 26 trenches in all. Of these, more than 20 are found in Indian Ocean itself, remaining 2 in Pacific and 3 in Atlantic, so it's 21 here. And you have mid-continental ridge. Now these ridges are kind of fast, those ridges that are made very fast. These ridges are found in the eastern Pacific side. So fast forming ridges are found in East Pacific. You have moderately forming ridges or slow forming ridges, which I can say is found in the mid-Atlantic. And finally, you have ultra slow, or I can say very slow formation of ridges can be seen in the Southwest Indian Ridge. Now, besides these, there are various things that we must be sure about. So, ocean floor, basically, the abyssal plain is made of basaltic rocks. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next slide here. This slide shows the major drenges in the oceans. So, you have the various names of the drenges. Now, as I said, the various sections, they are known by various names. And the continental shelf is most predominant in Atlantic Ocean. So this is the Atlantic Ocean, where most of the continental shelves are found, and around 13.3% of the Atlantic Ocean is covered with continental shelf. This is Pacific, and again you have Pacific here. So this Pacific area has around 5.7% of continental shelf region, and finally you have the Indian Ocean here, which is around 4.7% of the continental shelf areas. As we talked about ridges, the Atlantic ridge is a kind of slow forming ridge. The ridges found in Pacific are fast forming, while the Indian ridge, the Southwest Indian ridge, is among the slowest ridge formations in the ocean. So these were some of the basic features or the basic topographies that we have talked about in the ocean and the terminologies that are used. Now we will move on to the next section, that is known as the ocean layers. Now the word pelagic is used to denote ocean areas. So you have the word pelagic, and that denotes the life in the ocean. Now, you have the continental shelf region, the continental slope. This is a small uprising, so this continental rise, the main ocean basin, and finally the trenches. Based on this, there are various layers by which the sunlight percolates into the ocean, and those layers are named as epipelagic zone. That's the topmost layer. This layer is also known as the sunlight zone. Here you have the maximum sunlight that comes in, and you have the maximum creatures or maximum water animals that can be found in this zone. This zone is till 200 meters. From 200 meters to 1000 meters, you have the mesopelagic zone. This is also known as the twilight zone or the mid-water zone. You have the twilight zone or the mid-water zone. Here you have animals which are bioluminescent. So you have lights coming out from animals and small creatures. The next here is bathypelagic zone. So these two zones together, the epipelagic and the mesopelagic zone, together constitute the continental shelf region. The next is bathypelagic, which forms the major section of the continental slope area. Bathypelagic is also known as midnight zone. This zone lacks light. So most of the creatures found in this zone are usually black or red in color. Okay. Most common creatures in this area are kind of big fishes. Okay. You have whales which are found in bathypelagic zone. The next is Abyssopelagic zone. It is also known as Abyss area. This forms the major region for the continental basin from 4,000 to 6,000 meters deep. You have the Abyssopelagic zone. The only creatures that are found here are basket stars, and you have small squids that can be found in this region. Okay. This region covers nearly 3/4 of the ocean surface. Since we have the ocean floor as the predominant region in this whole ocean topography, the ocean basin covers 3/4 of the total ocean floor. So therefore, mesopelagic zone itself covers 3/4 of the total region, and this is again a dark zone with very tiny animals, no sunlight. It has freezing water temperatures. Now, an important thing to note here is the freezing point of water is 0 degrees Celsius, okay, but the freezing point of ocean water is 1.87 degrees Celsius. The reason behind that is the ocean water is saltier as compared to saltier than the normal water, so it has a higher freezing point. So at this zone you have a temperature of around 1.87 degrees Celsius. So most of the water here is frozen. Sperm whales can dive up to this region. And finally you have the hydropelagic zone. This zone is common in the Drenges. So these are the zones which is found after 6,000 meters of depth. Common example is Marina Trench, which is one of the deepest trench of the ocean. Okay. The common animals that are found, the only animals I should say found in this region are starfish, and you have tube worms. So this is a basic classification of the various layers of ocean. Now there are some important questions that can be formed from these layers. First is, continental shelf includes which layers? So the answer would be epipelagic zone and the mesopelagic zone. Okay. Then the order of these layers is very important. You have the epi, which forms the outer. The word epi itself means outer. So it's the topmost layer. It's also known as sunlight zone. Below it you have the mesopelagic. Bathy is towards the base. Abyssopelagic is similar to the name abyss. So you have the ocean basin, which is also known as the abyssal plains. So you can correlate it easily. This region would be found in the ocean basin. And finally you have the hydropelagic region, which is the deepest region. Now in the last slide, we have a combination of these two things which make the concept very clear. So you have only the epipelagic zone is called as the photic zone where light can penetrate in. So you have the topmost layer, this region, and this region is the epipelagic region, and the only region which is photic or where light is present. Below this all forms the aphotic zone, and you can see how the temperature is falling as we go deeper into the ocean. So till the mesopelagic zone you have a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius. Towards bathypelagic you have 4 degrees Celsius, and in the abyssopelagic you have freezing temperature, that is 1.87 degrees Celsius. Now, if we classify this whole region, we can see the regions of high waters and low waters. The region between the high water and the low water, that is this region, is known as the littoral zone. We call it the littoral zone, where a lot of sediments flow in. Okay, from the region from the low waters till the continental slope, the continental shelf area is known as the sublittoral or the continental shelf. Okay, so this region from low waters till the continental shelf region is known as sublittoral. And littoral and sublittoral together form the major section of the major activities of the ocean floor. Okay, and finally the next region is the basal region. You have the abyssal region where you have the abyssal plains, and finally you have the hedal region which forms the hedal pelagic zone. And all these three regions together, starting from bathypelagic to head and pelagic region is known as benthic region. So these three together, the benthic-pelagic, abyssal-pelagic and head-pelagic together are known as the benthic region. Okay, and within the pelagic regions we consider the oceanic as well as the neritic regions. And this neritic region is the sublittoral region. So these were the major divisions are the parts of ocean topography. We would be continuing with the temperature and the wave currents in the further classes. For those lectures, you can subscribe to Examrace channel. Till then, have a good day ahead.